Al Capone, the shocking truth behind America's most notorious gangster, serial life, legacy, and lessons. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, better known as Al Capone, was not just a gangster. He was a symbol of a time when crime flourished in the shadows, unchecked and untouchable. Born in Brooklyn, New York, on January 17, 1899, Capone's journey from a scrappy immigrant boy to America's most feared and infamous gangster is a story drenched in blood, ambition, and betrayal. Early life, the making of a criminal. Capone grew up in a tough Italian immigrant neighborhood in Brooklyn. His family, like many others, sought the American dream, but young Al found himself drawn to the streets rather than the classroom. A brutal slap from a teacher led him to drop out of school at age 14. From there, the streets became his education. As a teenager, Capone worked odd jobs but eventually fell under the influence of Johnny Torrio, a respected figure in the criminal underworld. Torrio became a mentor to Capone, teaching him the ins and outs of organized crime. By the time he was in his early 20s, Capone had moved to Chicago to join Torrio in managing the city's burgeoning bootlegging empire. The Shadow Empire, Capone's rise to power. The Prohibition era was a golden opportunity for criminals, and Capone seized it with both hands. In 1920, the Volstead Act made the sale and distribution of alcohol illegal. For Capone, it was a chance to build an empire. By 1925, he had taken over Torrio's operations, turning them into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that controlled speakeasies, brothels, gambling dens, and breweries. Capone's wealth and influence were unmatched. He employed thousands of men, bribed politicians, judges, and police officers, and controlled entire neighborhoods. But his reign was not just about business, it was about instilling fear. He ruled Chicago with an iron fist, eliminating anyone who dared to challenge him. The bloody side of business. Capone's rise was not without bloodshed. One of his most infamous acts was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre on February 14, 1929. Capone ordered the execution of 7 members of a rival gang led by George "Bugs" Moran. Disguised as police officers, Capone's men lined Moran's associates against a wall and gunned them down in cold blood. The massacre shocked the nation and solidified Capone's reputation as a ruthless and dangerous man. But the St. Valentine's Day Massacre was just one chapter in a long list of atrocities. Capone's men were known for their creative and brutal methods of eliminating enemies. Some were dismembered and left as warnings. Others simply disappeared, their bodies never found. Capone's reach extended into the police force, ensuring that his crimes often went unpunished. One particularly gruesome story involves Tony "Three Fingers" Galliano, a former associate who tried to skim profits from Capone's operations. When Capone discovered the betrayal, he orchestrated a staged meeting. Galliano was tied to a chair, and Capone, in front of his lieutenants, bludgeoned him with a baseball bat. This horrifying act wasn't just punishment, it was a chilling message to others. Another lesser-known event involved Capone's use of a specialized hit squad known as the Chicago Outfit to enforce his will. Members of the squad were highly skilled and deeply loyal, carrying out assassinations with precision. In one instance, a rival gang leader was found encased in concrete, a grim reminder of what happened to those who crossed Capone. Living in the shadows, Capone's secret world. Capone's public persona was carefully crafted. To the public, he was a philanthropist who donated to soup kitchens and helped the poor during the Great Depression. He even opened one of the first free soup kitchens in Chicago. But behind the scenes, he was a master manipulator who used his wealth to buy loyalty and silence. Capone operated from luxurious headquarters at the Lexington Hotel, which was equipped with secret tunnels and escape routes. He traveled in bulletproof cars and surrounded himself with heavily armed bodyguards. Despite his ostentatious lifestyle, Capone was always paranoid, knowing that betrayal could come at any moment, and it often did. The Lexington Hotel also housed Capone's private vault, which allegedly contained millions in cash, valuable artifacts, and incriminating records. This vault became the subject of speculation for decades. In 1986, Geraldo Rivera famously attempted to open the vault on live television, only to find it empty, a testament to Capone's ability to remain an enigma, even decades after his death. Capone's life also included lavish parties that attracted the city's elite. These gatherings were a mix of opulence and intimidation. Guests enjoyed the finest champagne and caviar, but they were acutely aware that crossing Capone could lead to their disappearance. It was a world where luxury and fear coexisted. Shocking secrets and betrayals. One lesser-known fact about Capone is his role in Chicago's political scene. Capone's money and influence helped sway elections, ensuring that his operations remained untouched. But his alliances were fragile. In one instance, a close associate betrayed him by selling information to a rival gang. Capone's response was swift and brutal. He personally beat the traitor to death with a baseball bat during a banquet, a chilling display of his authority. Another shocking moment came when Capone's own brother, James, who had become a Prohibition officer, openly denounced him. This betrayal cut deep, but Capone's empire was too vast to be threatened by familial ties. Capone's paranoia often led to over-the-top measures to secure his position. He employed spies to monitor his own men and installed secret microphones in his headquarters to catch any whispers of dissent. Despite these efforts, his empire was constantly under threat from rival gangs and law enforcement. Capone's empire also extended into the entertainment industry. He controlled several jazz clubs in Chicago, using them as fronts for his illegal operations. Musicians and performers were often coerced into working for him, knowing that refusal could lead to dire consequences. These clubs became hubs of activity for both legitimate entertainment and illicit deals. Capone and the media. Capone was a master of public relations. He often invited journalists to his lavish parties, where he would charm them with wit and generosity. He used the media to his advantage, portraying himself as a family man and a benevolent benefactor to the poor. However, these carefully curated images were a stark contrast to the brutality of his operations. One chilling incident was Capone's reaction to a journalist who published an unflattering article. The reporter received a package containing a dead fish, a mafia symbol indicating impending death. While the journalist survived, the message was clear. Capone's reach extended far beyond the underworld. Capone's interactions with the press were not always antagonistic. In some cases, he used journalists as allies, feeding them stories that painted him in a favorable light. These relationships ensured that his public image remained balanced, even as his enemies grew. The beginning of the end. By the late 1920s, Capone's empire began to crumble. The federal government, unable to pin him for his violent crimes, targeted him for tax evasion. In 1931, Capone was finally convicted and sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. The trial was a media spectacle, marking the downfall of the man who had once ruled Chicago. Capone's time in prison was marked by decline. He served most of his sentence at Alcatraz, where his health deteriorated due to syphilis, a disease he had contracted years earlier. By the time of his release in 1939, he was a shadow of his former self, no longer the fearsome gangster he once was. Capone's final years. After his release, Capone retreated to his mansion in Palm Island, Florida. His once sharp mind was dulled by the effects of syphilis, and he spent his final years surrounded by family, disconnected from the empire he had built. He died on January 25, 1947, at the age of 48. Despite his diminished state, Capone's death was widely reported, and his legacy continued to captivate the public. He remained a figure of fascination, a man whose life embodied the extremes of the American dream, success and downfall. Legacy and lessons. Al Capone's story is more than just the rise and fall of one of history's most infamous gangsters. It's a reflection of how organized crime can shape entire societies. Capone's reign, built on violence, corruption, and a disregard for law and order, had lasting effects not only on the United States but also on the world. His actions highlighted the dangers of an unchecked criminal empire, and the systemic weaknesses in law enforcement that allowed it to flourish. Capone's ability to evade prosecution for years demonstrated the limitations of local law enforcement in the face of organized crime. This catalyzed the growth and power of federal agencies like the FBI, which were established with greater authority to combat criminals operating across state lines. It also led to advancements in forensic accounting and the tools now used to trace financial crimes, setting the stage for modern crime-fighting techniques. Capone's story brought worldwide attention to the phenomenon of organized crime and its influence on government, business, and even culture. His empire inspired similar criminal organizations around the globe, showing how powerful and destructive the underworld could be. In a broader sense, Capone's life shaped how societies view the relationship between crime and politics, how easily corruption can infiltrate systems, and how powerful figures can manipulate public perception. But perhaps the most enduring lesson of Capone's story is the ultimate futility of living a life of crime. Despite his immense wealth and power, Capone ended his days as a broken man, debilitated by syphilis and disconnected from the empire he once ruled. His downfall was not just the result of law enforcement efforts, but of his own inability to trust anyone and his constant fear of betrayal. His life illustrates that while crime might bring temporary power, it will always be undermined by distrust, paranoia, and, ultimately, the law. Capone's legacy serves as a stark reminder that the pursuit of wealth and power through illegal means is not only a dangerous path, but one that leads to destruction. The lesson here is clear. Integrity, loyalty, and justice will always triumph over corruption and violence. Capone's life remains a powerful symbol of the price of ambition when it is fueled by crime, and the consequences of believing that power can be wielded without regard for the moral and legal foundations that hold society together.